Okay, so much anticipated. Here is my first review summary. I don't even know what to call this. Video, we'll just say video. Content, perhaps, is a better word, about some of the speakers and the things that I'm seeing at Breast Teasel. So, the thing that I was able to um, view today and not have to participate in was Marcelo Barros's opening plenary talk about. It was entitled "Building Bridges to the Unforeseen: A Challenging Blueprint," and so he was talking to everybody in terms of his audience. I mean, obviously he's talking to English teachers because we're at Breast Teasel, um, but he was talking to us in terms of educators. So kind of using that broader perspective of this is, our responsibility as well as other educators in other fields. So his main the thing he started with was asking, is education the solution? Because he highlighted and he used three. I wrote them down because I have notes. I have to use notes because I will not remember all of the stuff that goes into my brain. So he was using some index, three different indices. I actually don't know the plural. I should know the plural of that. So one of them was about corruption perception, the Corruption Perception Index of 2021. Then he looked at the Global Peace Index, and then he looked at PISA, PISA. And so he was comparing the statistics specifically for Brazil because that's our teaching context. So he was comparing the statistics of Brazil in those three. I haven't gotten the full. Sorry if you can hear the ambulance outside. Um, I haven't gotten his full presentation yet, but I will, and then I can post it in the links below, or I'll comment with what he was referring to. So he used these in indexes. Sorry, I don't know why it's been a long day. It's stumping me. I don't know how to make that plural. I don't know how to make index plural. That's inappropriate for me as a teacher. But so he was pretty much talking about how Brazil is in the lower half or lower third of these, and it's representative of the culture of society in general here, and trying to relate that to the culture of education, and he gave a wonderful case study about Ceará, where he was talking about a educational plan that they had starting in. Oh gosh, sorry, I didn't write the date down. It was starting 2015, I want to say, 2013 perhaps. I can get the dates on that. And they had this huge initiative for their education programs, and their schools saw a dramatic increase. And of course, we have to take into account that the numbers may or may not have been 100% accurate, but there was a change, and there was an increase in education. And it was significant. So pretty much he wanted to talk about ideas about how, as educators, we can kind of move the conversation forward, move this forward in terms of what can we actually do to integrate into our classrooms. And he gave five. He gave five points that he wanted people to start thinking about integrating into the classroom. I'm reading my notes, so I'm sorry I'm not looking at you. To integrate into the classroom, to start trying to overcome this problem of corruption, of the Global Peace Index, meaning that there was violence, of violent actions, not necessarily violent crimes, but not necessarily the crimes that we always think of, and to increase the level of education in general in Brazil. So here are the five things that he wanted to summarize. First, critical literacy. So pretty much helping people think. And I love this. I love this idea. I think this is like 100%. I am on board with this. So yes, Marcel, yes, 100%. And what I immediately related it to when I was listening to him speak was classes on skills. And one of the things that I learned specifically in my Delta course last year was that we're not very good. We're not very good at actually teaching skills. This is just my perspective, and this is an overgeneralization. And I'm not saying every teacher is like this, but I think we're just not very good at teaching skills. We're very good at testing skills. So if you think about having like a reading class, for example, they have, you might pre-teach the vocabulary and then they read something and then they answer questions and then they do true and false and then there's a conversation afterwards. But we're not really telling them how to read, which would actually be a skill building class. That would be a reading skills class. We're not really doing that. We're testing their reading skills, but we're not giving them any ideas on how to improve that. So I really kind of resonated this critical literacy with that idea. And I thought, yes, because after doing my Delta last year, and one of my classes, my lessons that I did for that was evaluated for Delta was a reading skill class. And so I had to do a lot of research on it, and I had to really like think about how would I teach the skill. And there was a lot of talking about metacognition and like what's going on in your head when you're reading. Like, what are you looking for? Why? If you're doing true and false, like how are you getting the information from that? So kind of building those skills up before we do the testing. So I thought that was a great point. The next one that Marcelo pointed out was nonviolent communications, and he specifically referenced microaggressions in books like ELT books, course books, and printed materials that we have, and sometimes they go unrecognized or just we forget and all that stuff. And I think, well, I mean, I have a personal opinion on this, and again, I'm never trying to be controversial, but I do like the idea of nonviolent communication because I think everybody can support that. Like we should be in favor of nonviolence. But at the same time, I think that there's some people that don't recognize those types of things. Like, for example, microaggressions. Like, I don't know if I would recognize everything that would trigger another person. Do you know what I'm saying? So as much as we try to be aware of these things, sometimes it triggers somebody else into an emotional response. And it's like, I didn't even really think that was okay. That's like, I totally respect it. I totally understand. But please don't get upset because it wasn't even something that was going through my head. Because a lot of times when teachers are planning, we're planning so much content, so much material. This is not an excuse by any means. This is not an excuse. But when we're doing so much of that, I think that it's difficult for us to take into consideration all things. So while we're talking about nonviolent communication, I would also like to kind of couple that and pair it with the idea that creating a climate and an environment in your classroom where students feel comfortable enough to come up to you and say, hey, teacher, like that wasn't okay. And be like, what wasn't okay? Because usually I'm just so oblivious to it that I'm just so focused on language and like doing things that I don't really think about that sometimes. And it's my fault. I know that I should, but sometimes it escapes my planning brain. So I think while we're also, focusing on nonviolent communication, 100% support that. I also think that we need to create environments and we need to create skills, going back to his first point, skills where people can communicate in a way that's very clear, it's very understood, but at the same time it's respectful, it's not aggressive, it will be confrontational because you're confronting somebody about something that they don't like, right? So you have to kind of, mix that together. So we can't just say like nonviolent communication. Well, you have to give them the tools to be able to do that because everyone gets triggered or has an emotional response or has these types of feelings about so many things. It's hard to keep track in the world nowadays. So we try to be respectful, but also, if something is inappropriate or you see these microaggressions, and I think Marcelo was talking about maybe something in the text about I think it was about women for some reason. I remember him saying something about women or I'm not really 100% sure, so I don't want to misquote him. I think more importantly than saying, no, you have to do nonviolent, sometimes people don't realize it, which again, I understand that that's a fault and they have to work on that. But at the same time, we have to give students skills to be able to talk about the hard things, talking about really hard conversations. The next one he said was CLIL. So teaching content, that also includes the language. So not necessarily just teaching the language, but also content behind it. Somebody who's been working with this actually is Edu Freitas. So if you're interested, sorry, Edu, but you can message him because I just saw him like 20 minutes ago. He's just in my mind, but he has been working on things, and I think he's been working with CLIL. So questions about that, ask him. But when he was talking about CLIL, I actually started thinking of one of the talks that I'm going to be giving at the end of the week on Saturday. It's integrating global citizenship education. And the connection to that is that we don't have to go out and reinvent the wheel. And I hope any of you who are attending the event really come to my session if you're interested in something like this. So the whole idea behind global citizenship education is just kind of opening that perspective up a little bit and recognizing that everyone's an individual. And we celebrate the differences and diversity of individuals. However, we need to look beyond the scope of who we are and where we're from and all of those types of things. So we can use and adapt course books to amplify those things, because sometimes course books or materials are limited, but we can amplify those things in a much different way. So he made me immediately think of the thing that I was talking about on Saturday. I was like, oh yeah, okay, so it made sense to me. Networking, so obviously that is going to help in kind of building these bridges and getting people known and chatting with each other. So feel free to leave a message for me, and because I love to chat with people if I haven't talked to you already at the event. And finally, advocacy was the last one that he pointed out, and he talked about that he said it was a bad word now, activism. And here's where I get stuck a little bit, Marcelo. And maybe, I don't know, he's probably not even going to watch this, but here's where I get stuck a little bit, because I'm all for advocacy. However, if we're trying to build bridges, I would rather not group people into separate groups. What I would rather do is just kind of celebrate individualism and say, yeah, we're just, humans, like there's the human race, and that's it. So activism in terms of wanting to pursue, all of the equality and all of the opportunities, equal opportunities for everyone, 100% behind it. I would just be careful with using things like activism, because I think that it sometimes can separate people into groups that maybe we don't want to separate people into groups. And that's just my personal opinion. And if anybody has a different opinion, please respond, and I would love to discuss it with you, because in my vision, it's just, we should just kind of celebrate individuals, their diversity, and the whole range of people that we have going on, and maybe not lump them into different groups. And I think that would actually reduce a lot of the tensions and the problems that we're having nowadays. So that was getting to the end. So I do want to thank Marcelo Barros. I don't think he'll ever watch this video, but that's fine. But his talk was really, really interesting in terms of what we should be thinking about for the future, and how we can start integrating really important things into our classes with our students. And again, I want to reiterate those 5 things. So he focused on critical literacy, teaching people not teaching people, helping people how to learn, nonviolent communication, CLIL, networking, and advocacy. So take any of those, research them, find some papers on it, have a conversation with your friends, run with it, and see what comes out of it, and try to implement these things in your classroom. So hopefully that summary and a little bit of my opinion and perspective helped anybody who's not been able to attend the conference. So I tried to summarize it as quickly as possible, but it's been about 15 minutes. So sorry. But I think the talk was an hour, so not bad, right? I'll be back tomorrow with several more videos about the talks and workshops that I attend, and I'll try to do this for each of them. So even if you're not attending Breast TESOL, you're getting a little piece of the Breast TESOL International Conference. Thank you.